I spent 27 years being invisible to my family. My achievements went unnoticed while every breath my sister Rebecca took was celebrated. When I won awards, my parents missed the ceremonies for her routine checkups. When I graduated college, they stayed home because she had a mild fever. I built Almond Iris, my authentication company, without a single word of encouragement from them. Then came that Thanksgiving dinner, when Rebecca found my financial documents in my bag. "Michael is worth $12.6 million, she announced, to the stunned table. Not one person asked how I built my empire. Instead, they immediately calculated what I could do for them. My sister needed experimental treatments. My parents needed retirement funds. My cousins needed business investments. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I had always known. I was not a son. I was a resource they had discovered. They would regret teaching me that family bonds are conditional. My revenge would be as cold and precise as my appraisals. I spent 27 years being invisible to my family. My achievements went unnoticed while every breath my sister Rebecca took was celebrated. When I won awards, my parents missed the ceremonies for her routine checkups. When I graduated college, they stayed home because she had a mild fever. I built Almond Iris, my authentication company, without a single word of encouragement from them. Then came that Thanksgiving dinner when Rebecca found my financial documents in my bag. "Michael is worth $12.6 million, she announced to the stunned table. Not one person asked how I built my empire. Instead, they immediately calculated what I could do for them. My sister needed experimental treatments. My parents needed retirement funds. My cousins needed business investments. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what I had always known. I was not a son. I was a resource they had discovered. They would regret teaching me that family bonds are conditional. My revenge would be as cold and precise as my appraisals. The morning light filters through the blinds of my office as I turn a Georgian-era diamond necklace under specialized lighting. My fingers trace the hairline fracture in the third stone from the center, invisible to untrained eyes. Worth approximately $380,000 despite the flaw. I make a note in my ledger, the satisfaction of accurate assessment filling me briefly before the familiar emptiness returns. My phone buzzes with a notification. I've been selected for the Reinhardt Award in Authenticity, the highest honor in the appraisal world. My thumb hovers over the contact labeled Home before I set the phone down. What would be the point? I remember the science fair, age 10. My project on crystal formation won first place, but my parents never saw it. Rebecca had a routine checkup that day. I stood alone beside my blue ribbon while other kids celebrated with their families. That night, I carefully placed the ribbon on the refrigerator. By morning, it was gone, replaced by Rebecca's prescription schedule. The pattern continued through high school, then college. My graduation played out to empty seats in the family section. Rebecca had developed a fever that morning. My acceptance letter to the Gemological Institute was read alone in my bedroom, then placed back under the stack of her medical bills where I'd found it. When I secured my first business loan for Almond Iris at 19, the loan officer shook my hand firmly. "Your family must be very proud," he'd said. I nodded, though there was no family to tell. Now 7 years later, I'm worth $12.6 million. The company I built authenticates the most valuable estate collections nationwide. My bank accounts grow while I live modestly in a small apartment, wearing off-the-rack suits. Not out of frugality, but because I never developed a taste for displaying wealth. There was never anyone to impress. The Reinhardt Award ceremony is scheduled the day after Thanksgiving. After years of declining holiday invitations, I decide to attend the family dinner this year. Perhaps the award will finally be enough to make them see me. I arrive at the suburban home where I grew up, award notification and financial documents secure in my leather briefcase. My mother's hug is perfunctory, my father's handshake distracted. Rebecca sits in her usual place of honor at the table, pale but smiling as relatives fuss over her. "Michael, we weren't sure you'd come," my mother says, not quite looking at me. "Rebecca's been asking about you." I doubt this is true. Rebecca and I have exchanged perhaps 10 words in the past 3 years. During dinner, I excuse myself to take a business call. When I return, something in the atmosphere has changed. Conversations halt. Eyes dart toward me with new interest. Rebecca smiles, a strange gleam in her eyes. I was looking for some aspirin. In your bag, Michael. I found something else instead. She holds up a quarterly statement from my investment portfolio. Were you ever going to tell us you're a millionaire? The silence breaks into a cacophony of questions and exclamations. Not one person asks how I built my company. Not one question about the years of work, the expertise I developed, the sacrifices made. Instead, Rebecca's treatments aren't covered by insurance. Your father and I haven't been able to save for retirement. I've been developing this amazing business opportunity. College tuition for your nieces and nephews. I sit in perfect stillness, watching their faces transform with calculation. The award notification remains untouched in my bag. I see with absolute clarity what I've always known but refused to acknowledge. I am not a son or brother or nephew. I am a resource previously untapped, now discovered. That night, in the guest bedroom of my childhood home, I make no emotional decisions. I simply acknowledge the truth my mind has always understood but my heart refused to accept. The clarity is almost peaceful. I leave before dawn, the award notification still in my bag. I place my house key on the kitchen counter. I will not return. The calls begin at 9 the next morning as my family discovers my absence. I watch my phone light up repeatedly. Mother, father, Rebecca, aunt, uncle, cousins. The voicemails follow a pattern. Brief expressions of concern followed by longer explanations of their financial needs. Not once does anyone mention my company by name. Not one question about how I built my success. No congratulations. Just variations on the same theme. Now that they know I have resources, those resources should naturally flow toward them. I don't answer. Instead, I contact my attorney to begin gathering information. With clinical detachment, I request detailed analyses of each family member's financial situation. The picture emerges precisely as I expected. Years of poor financial decisions masked by emotional appeals about Rebecca's health. While I begin this process, I accept an invitation I'd previously declined. A television appearance on Hidden Treasures, a popular show where experts authenticate family heirlooms. The episode films the day of the Reinhardt Award ceremony. I attend both, accepting the industry's highest honor with the same quiet control I maintain in all aspects of my life. My phone continues to fill with messages. My father's communications grow increasingly demanding. It's your responsibility to help your sister. My mother's turned tearful. After all we've done for you. Rebecca's alternate between guilt and anger. I always knew you were selfish. I document each contact methodically. The patterns reveal themselves in data points. I can analyze without emotion clouding my judgment. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, Rebecca appears at my office. The receptionist, alarmed by her tearful insistence about a family emergency, allows her through. You've been ignoring us, she says, voice rising as my employees pretend not to listen. Mom and Dad are devastated. I need that treatment, Michael. It's $40,000, that's nothing to you now. I maintain perfect composure. Please lower your voice in my place of business. Your place of business? This is about family. Mom and Dad gave everything for me, and now you can't give anything back? That's correct, I say, pressing the security button under my desk. I can't. As security arrives, I stand. You have exactly summarized the situation, Rebecca. They gave everything to you, nothing to me. And now I'm returning the exact same proportion of my attention and resources. After she's escorted out, I draft a letter. It contains no emotional appeals, just facts, exact calculations of what was spent on her treatments versus my education, precise accounting of missed events, documented evidence of systematic neglect. I include a final paragraph. I have donated $40,000 anonymously to the hospital in your name. This will cover your treatment. I did this not because of your demands, but because I've been making similar donations for years. The difference is that now you know about them. just as I now know that acknowledgement of my existence is directly proportional to my financial utility to this family. The letter is delivered by courier. The calls increase, then gradually taper. I maintain my silence and continue building my case. This is only the beginning of my response. They will learn what it means to be truly invisible, just as they taught me for 27 years. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Alm & Iris authenticates the lost Romanov collection, catapulting the company into international attention. The publicity is carefully managed. I give selective interviews, appear at industry events, build my reputation methodically. My net worth doubles almost overnight. My parents attempt reconciliation through a pastor from their church. The meeting lasts exactly 7 minutes before they mention Rebecca's ongoing medical needs and their depleted savings. I thank them for their time and leave without further comment. I begin seeing Dr. Winters, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Not to reconcile, but to understand why I spent 27 years seeking validation from people constitutionally incapable of providing it. You're unusual among my patients, Dr. Winters notes during our 3rd session. Most struggle to acknowledge the truth of their situation. You see it with remarkable clarity. I appraise objects for authenticity, I respond. I've applied the same principles to my family relationships. And what is your appraisal? That they're counterfeit, manufactured to appear valuable but lacking intrinsic worth. As my public profile rises, I develop a genuine friendship with Eleanor, a fellow appraiser whose specialty is ancient manuscripts. She recognizes quality in people with the same acuity she applies to parchment and vellum. Her friendship is the first authentic connection I've experienced. No agenda, no calculation, just mutual respect. 6 months after Thanksgiving, Rebecca gives an interview to the local newspaper. The headline reads, "Heartless Success Story. Local businessman abandons family in medical crisis." The article is a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. Rebecca's ongoing health struggles juxtaposed with pointed references to my sudden wealth and inexplicable cruelty. I make no public response. Instead, I contact former teachers, neighbors, family, friends, anyone who witnessed my childhood. The documentation builds. Absence notes from school events signed by parents who were at Rebecca's appointments, birthday parties with no family present, achievements unacknowledged. I learned that Rebecca has organized a medical fundraiser using her newspaper story as leverage. The event is scheduled at the Grand Hotel, designed to maximize community sympathy and pressure. "Will you respond?" Eleanor asks when I show her the invitation that somehow found its way to my office. "Yes," I tell her. "I'll attend." "That seems uncharacteristically confrontational," she observes. "Not confrontational," I correct her. Conclusive. The night before the fundraiser, I review the portfolio my team has assembled. Every family communication documented, every financial transaction analyzed, every public statement fact-checked and annotated. For the first time in my life, I feel not anger, but clarity. Tomorrow will not be an emotional reckoning, but a final authentication, a definitive assessment of true versus perceived value. The Grand Hotel ballroom is decorated with medical symbols and enlarged photos of Rebecca, as a child in a hospital bed, as a teenager receiving treatment, as an adult bravely smiling through pain. Tables feature donation cards and emotional testimonials about her struggle. My entrance causes immediate ripples of reaction. Conversations pause, heads turn. My mother spots me first, her expression cycling rapidly from shock to hope to calculation. She hurries over, embracing me with theatrical relief. "Michael, I knew you'd come to your senses," she says loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Family always comes together in crisis." My father joins us, hand extended. "Son, it's good you're here." People were starting to talk. Rebecca approaches, more cautiously, uncertainty in her eyes. She's lost weight since her office visit, and despite everything, I note this with clinical concern. "I didn't think you'd come," she says. "I told you I would attend, not in words but in patterns of behavior." "I'm nothing if not consistent," I reply. The event coordinator, recognizing me from my television appearances, asks if I'd like to say a few words. My parents exchange nervous glances but can hardly object without creating a scene. At the podium, I survey the room filled with community members who've known our family for decades. My voice, when I speak, is measured and clear. Many of you know me as Michael Harrow, founder of Alm and Iris Authentication. Fewer know me as Michael Harrow, brother of Rebecca. This disparity is not accidental. I remove a folder from my jacket. I specialize in determining the authenticity and value of objects. Tonight, I'm applying those skills to something more personal. For the next 11 minutes, I speak without emotion, presenting evidence rather than accusations. Specific dates of achievements unattended, documented patterns of neglect, financial records showing exactly how family resources were allocated throughout my childhood. This is not about Rebecca's illness, I clarify. She deserves every treatment available. This is about a pattern of choices made by adults who were responsible for 2 children, but consistently recognized only one. Murmurs ripple through the audience. I see recognition in the eyes of teachers present, uncomfortable acknowledgement from neighbors who witnessed my solitary childhood. What none of you know, including my family, is that for the past 5 years I've anonymously funded several of Rebecca's treatments. I project documentation onto the screen behind me. These donations began when I earned my first significant commission, long before anyone in this room knew I had resources worth demanding. My mother's face has drained of color. My father stares at the floor. Rebecca looks genuinely shocked. Today I'm announcing the creation of the Visibility Scholarship Foundation, providing educational support to siblings of chronically ill children. It's named for Mrs. Elaine Visibility, my 3rd grade teacher, who was the first person to notice I had stopped trying to be seen. Mrs. Visibility, now elderly, sits in the 2nd row. Tears stream down her face. I've endowed this foundation with $5 million. It will help ensure that other children don't disappear within their own families. I close my folder. Rebecca's fundraiser deserves your support. Her medical needs are real and significant. I've made my contribution anonymously, as always. I pause. What I won't contribute is the pretense that my value to this family exists independent of my financial utility. As I leave the podium, I place the Reinhardt Award, which I've carried in my briefcase, on the donation table. My family doesn't approach me as I walk out. They can't. The community that once sympathized with their plight now views them through the lens of my evidence-based assessment. For the first time, they are the ones who have become invisible. In the year following the fundraiser, Aum and Iris expands internationally. We open offices in London, Tokyo, and Dubai. My net worth triples. The Visibility Scholarship identifies its first 20 recipients. Bright, overlooked children who've learned to make themselves small in homes dominated by medical crises. I meet each scholar personally. In their eyes, I recognize my own childhood determination, their achievements all the more remarkable for having been accomplished without witness. I ensure they know they're seen now. The foundation partners with family counseling services to educate parents on maintaining balance when one child requires intensive care. Several hospitals adopt our family support protocol. A book documenting these efforts becomes a bestseller, though I decline to be interviewed for it. My family's situation deteriorates steadily. My father takes early retirement as community standing affects his dental practice. My mother's social circle constricts as former friends distance themselves. Rebecca's fundraiser met its goal, but subsequent attempts fail as people question where previous donations went. They make multiple attempts at reconciliation, each more desperate than the last. Letters, emails, messages through mutual acquaintances. Each communication follows the same pattern. Initial apologies followed quickly by financial requests. Each confirms my original assessment. I maintain my policy of non-engagement while documenting everything. The file grows thicker, the pattern more evident with each contact. They have learned nothing except that their resource has become inaccessible. On the anniversary of the fundraiser, a package arrives at my office. Inside is the Reinhardt Award I left on the donation table a year ago. Accompanying it is a letter signed by my parents and Rebecca. We were wrong. We didn't see you. We didn't value you except for what you could provide. We understand now what we've lost. Not your money, but you. If there's any path to forgiveness, please show us. We'll follow it, whatever it costs. I place the award in a custom display case on my office wall. The plaque beneath it reads, "Self-authentication, the artifact that proved its own value." Eleanor examines it during her next visit. "Are you going to respond to them?" she asks. "I already have," I tell her. "My response is my life, my success, my foundation, my choices. They're learning what I learned long ago. That genuine value exists independent of utility to others." 3 years after Thanksgiving, I host the and Iris Autumn Auction at the Grand Hotel, the same venue as Rebecca's fundraiser. The event attracts international collectors and substantial press coverage. During the pre-auction reception, I notice them standing near the entrance. My parents, older and diminished, and Rebecca, thinner but stable. They haven't been invited. They've come to witness the success they never acknowledged until it became inaccessible to them. Our eyes meet briefly across the crowded room. I see the recognition in their faces, not just of me, but of what they discarded. I turn away, returning to my conversation with collectors who value my expertise, colleagues who respect my judgment, scholars who appreciate my contributions, and friends who cherish my company. The missing family-shaped void that ached within me for 27 years has filled with connections of my own making. Authentic relationships founded on mutual respect rather than obligation or utility. As the auction begins, I step to the podium. The room falls silent, attention focused entirely on me. In this moment of professional triumph, surrounded by people who see me clearly, I understand the final truth. True value never required external validation. The most precious artifact I ever authenticated was my own worth. My family remains at the periphery, watching from outside the circle they never valued enough to join, now permanently assessed, categorized, and shelved in my past. 5 years after Thanksgiving, I'm invited to deliver the commencement address at my alma mater. The university president introduces me as one of our most distinguished graduates whose innovations in authentication methodology have revolutionized the field of appraisal. I stand at the podium, surveying the sea of hopeful faces. Value, I begin, is inherent, not assigned. This is true of objects, and it is equally true of people. My speech focuses on authenticity and self-worth. I tell the graduates that external validation is ephemeral, that true success comes from a deep understanding of one's intrinsic value. I do not mention my family by name, but I know they will see the recording circulating online. The story of my foundation and my estrangement has become something of a cautionary tale in professional circles. After the ceremony, I meet with this year's cohort of Visibility Scholarship recipients. The program has grown exponentially, now supporting over 100 students annually. We've expanded to include psychological support services specifically tailored to siblings of chronically ill children. Several recipients have gone on to prestigious graduate programs, all maintaining connections to the foundation. A week later, I receive a handwritten note from Rebecca. Unlike previous communications, it contains no requests, just an observation that she watched my commencement speech online and recognized herself in my careful omissions. The letter concludes, "I wonder if we could meet, just once." No parents, no expectations. I believe I understand something now that I didn't before. I place the letter in the ever-growing file without response. Her understanding comes 7 years too late. and Iris now employs over 300 specialists globally. Our authentication protocol has become the industry standard. Museums and collectors will not proceed with significant acquisitions without our certification. Auction houses include. Our documentation is standard practice. My personal net worth has reached 9 figures, though I continue to live modestly. On the 10th anniversary of the company's founding, we host a gala celebrating a decade of authentication excellence. The event is covered by major media outlets. During my speech, I announced the establishment of the Intrinsic Value Institute, a research center dedicated to developing advanced authentication techniques. The ability to distinguish authentic from counterfeit is not merely a business skill, I tell the assembled guests. It is a fundamental life skill, one that can prevent years of investment in relationships that offer diminishing returns. Halfway through the evening, I notice something unexpected. My father stands near the entrance, alone. He is thinner, grayer, visibly aged beyond his years. He makes no attempt to approach me, simply watches from a distance. When our eyes meet, he nods once, acknowledging my achievement without presuming welcome. Later, Eleanor, now my closest confidant, mentions his presence. "Your father was here." "Yes, I saw him." "He didn't try to speak with you." "That's new," I observe. "Perhaps he's finally learning." I learned through mutual connections that my mother passed away 6 months earlier, a quiet funeral sparsely attended. I sent flowers but did not appear in person. Rebecca's health has stabilized through a new treatment protocol, partially funded by research grants from the Visibility Foundation. She now works part-time at a local library. My father lives alone in a small apartment, his dental practice, long closed. 12 years after Thanksgiving, I write a memoir titled The Authentication Process, Finding True Value in a World of Counterfeits. It becomes an immediate bestseller, resonating with readers far beyond the appraisal community. The book details my methodology for authentication, but also serves as a metaphorical guide to assessing authentic relationships. One chapter directly addresses my family situation, laying out the facts of my childhood and the aftermath of Thanksgiving dinner with the same clinical precision I apply to suspected forgeries. I include documented evidence, time-stamped communications, financial records. It is not vindictive but methodical, allowing readers to make their own assessment based on evidence rather than emotion. The book tour takes me back to my hometown for the first time in years. The local bookstore is packed, the line stretching around the block. Among those waiting for signatures, I spot familiar faces from my childhood neighborhood, former teachers, parents of classmates. Some avoid my gaze, uncomfortable with their complicity in my invisibility. Others offer quiet words of validation, acknowledging what they witnessed but never addressed. Near the end of the event, Rebecca appears at my table, my book clutched in her hands. She has aged visibly, her once commanding presence diminished. She places the book before me, open to the chapter about our family. "You got it right," she says simply. "I didn't want to admit it, but you documented everything exactly as it happened." I sign the book without comment. "I read about the scholarship program," she continues. "It's making a difference for kids like you were. Kids I never noticed, either." "That's its purpose," I reply, closing the book and returning it to her. "Dad wants you to know he's proud of you." Too late, I know. But he wanted me to tell you. "Noted," I say, turning to the next person in line. The memoir's success leads to a documentary film about the Visibility Foundation. The filmmakers interview scholarship recipients, counselors, medical professionals, all testifying to the program's impact. They request an interview with my family members for contextual background. To my surprise, Rebecca and my father agree. On camera, my father appears shrunken, a shell of the authoritative figure from my childhood. "I didn't see what was happening," he admits. "Rebecca needed so much and Michael seemed so capable, so self-sufficient. I thought he was fine. I was wrong." Rebecca's interview is more measured. "When you grow up as the sick child, you become accustomed to being the center of attention. You don't question it. It becomes normal that everyone's resources are directed toward you. It took losing Michael completely to understand what that cost him, what it cost all of us." I decline to view the raw footage but authorize its inclusion in the final film. Their testimony is part of the evidence, neither more nor less significant than other documentation. 15 years after Thanksgiving, I receive an invitation to Rebecca's wedding. She is marrying a librarian colleague, a quiet ceremony planned at the local botanical gardens. The invitation comes with a personal note. "I know you won't come, and I understand why. I just wanted you to know that your foundation funded the support group where I met David. Your revenge created something beautiful for someone else. I thought you might appreciate the symmetry. I send a generous gift with a brief congratulatory note. It is not forgiveness, merely acknowledgement. The following year, my father suffers a stroke. His medical directives list me as next of kin despite our estrangement. The hospital administrator calls, explaining the situation with clinical detachment that mirrors my own. I arrange for the best care available, transferring him to a specialized facility. I pay for everything but do not visit. Rebecca sends regular updates on his condition, which I read and file without response. After 3 months, she writes, "He's asking for you. The doctors say it would help his recovery. I'm not asking for myself or for him. I'm just passing along medical information." I consider this objectively. A visit serves no purpose in my ongoing documentation. It neither advances nor hinders my established position. After careful consideration, I decide to go once to observe rather than engage. At the rehabilitation center, my father sits in a wheelchair by the window. The right side of his face droops slightly, his right arm immobile. When I enter, his eyes widen with recognition. "Michael," he says, voice slurred from the stroke. "You came." "Yes," I confirm, taking the chair opposite him. "Thank you." He struggles with the words. "For everything. The care. Coming today." I nod, acknowledging the facts without emotional investment. "I read your book," he continues slowly. "You were right. About everything. I know. Too late. To fix it," he says. "But not too late to say it. I was wrong. I'm sorry." I study him clinically, assessing the authenticity of his statement like I would a suspected forgery. His eyes hold mine steadily, unflinching in their acceptance of judgment. "Apology noted," I say finally. We sit in silence for several minutes. There is nothing more to say. As I rise to leave, he reaches out with his functioning hand, not to touch me, but in a gesture of release. "You built something remarkable," he says. "Without any help from us." Yes, I agree. I did. It is the last time I see him. He passes away 3 months later. I attend the funeral, standing at the back of the small gathering. Rebecca acknowledges my presence with a nod, but respects my distance. I leave before the service concludes. The documentation is complete. The assessment is final. The authentication process has reached its conclusion. 20 years after, Thanksgiving Iris has become a global empire with offices on 6 continents. I am invited to present at the World Economic Forum, addressing leaders on the topic of authenticity in both objects and relationships. My presentation draws unexpected parallels between economic systems and family dynamics, highlighting how perceived value often obscures intrinsic worth. The most dangerous counterfeit, I tell the assembled world leaders, is the false relationship. One that presents as unconditional while operating on purely transactional terms. The speech generates significant media attention. I am profiled. In major business publications, the story of my estrangement from my family, now a well-known aspect of my public persona. The profiles invariably describe me as cool, precise, and unflinching in his assessments. These are meant as criticisms, but I receive them as accurate observations. The Visibility Foundation now operates in 27 countries, providing support to thousands of overlooked siblings annually. I am approached by the World Health Organization to develop international protocols for family support systems when one child requires intensive medical care. Our research has conclusively demonstrated the long-term psychological impact of unbalanced family attention. A prestigious university creates a dedicated research center based on our methodologies, the Harrow Institute for Family Balance. I am invited to speak at its inauguration, where I announce a substantial endowment to ensure its perpetuity. This institute will continue its work long after I am gone, I tell the audience, ensuring that no child is rendered invisible by circumstances beyond their control. Rebecca attends the ceremony with her husband and their adopted daughter. She sits in the back row, making no attempt to approach me. Her presence is noted in several media reports, described variously as a gesture of reconciliation or an acknowledgement of her role in the family dynamic. Neither assessment is accurate. Her attendance is simply a data point, neither more nor less significant than any other. The following year, Rebecca publishes an article in a major psychology journal titled, "The Visible Sibling: Reflections on Preferential Treatment and Its Consequences." The piece is measured, well-researched, and unflinching in its self-assessment. She details the unintentional cruelty of being the center of a family's universe, while another child orbits unnoticed at the periphery. The tragedy, she writes, is that this invisibility is rarely deliberate. It happens through 1,000 small choices, each seemingly reasonable in isolation, cumulatively devastating in effect. By the time the pattern becomes clear, the damage is often irreparable. I read the article with clinical interest, adding it to my documentation file. It is a precise analysis, neither requesting forgiveness nor expecting response. It simply exists as testimony. 25 years after Thanksgiving, I received the Presidential Medal of Freedom for my contributions to cultural preservation, through authentication, and for the social impact of the Visibility Foundation. At the ceremony, the President cites the transformative effect of making the invisible visible, both in artifacts and in human experience. I am asked in the press conference afterward if my family will be attending the reception. I respond, with characteristic precision, my family consists of the colleagues, scholars, and foundation recipients with whom I have built meaningful relationships based on mutual respect and recognition. Many of them are here today. The answer generates headlines, not for its harshness but for its clarity. It becomes widely quoted in psychology textbooks as an example of redefining family based on authentic rather than biological connections. A week after the ceremony, I receive a package from Rebecca. Inside is a small wooden box I recognize immediately. It contained a collection of rare crystals I had assembled as a child, carefully labeled and categorized. I had assumed it was discarded decades ago during one of my parents' periodic purges of my belongings to make room for Rebecca's medical equipment. A note accompanies the box. I found this in the attic of Dad's house while clearing it for sale. I remember how proud you were of this collection, how precisely you organized each specimen. I should have seen then what I understand now. This belongs with you, as it always should have been. I opened the box to find every crystal exactly as I had arranged them, the handwritten labels in my childish script preserved intact. It is a small thing, insignificant in the scope of my current life, yet it represents something authentic from my childhood. I place it on my office shelf without response. 30 years after Thanksgiving, I am diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, treatable but requiring intensive care. The irony is not lost on me. The news remains private, shared only with Eleanor and my executive team to ensure business continuity. Rebecca learns of my condition through a mutual acquaintance in the medical community. She sends a brief email. I understand the value of privacy during medical challenges. If there is anything you need, I am here without expectation or agenda. This is not an attempt at reconciliation, simply an offer of practical support from someone with extensive experience in the patient advocacy system. I acknowledge the email with a single line. Your offer is noted. No support is currently required. The treatments are successful. Throughout the process, I continue working remotely, allowing no interruption in the operations of either Aum and Iris or the Foundation. When I return to public appearances, there is no indication I have been ill. At a gala celebration of the Visibility Foundation's 30th anniversary, I announce a new initiative focused on adult siblings reconnecting after childhood estrangement. The program will provide mediation services and psychological support, not to force reconciliation but to allow honest assessment of whether authentic connection is possible. Not all relationships can or should be restored, I explained. Some remain counterfeit despite the best intentions. This program will help individuals make that determination based on evidence rather than emotion or obligation. Rebecca attends the gala with her family. During the reception, she approaches me directly for the first time in decades. The new program is important, she says simply. It will help people make informed decisions rather than operating from guilt or wishful thinking. That's its purpose, I confirm. I've followed the Foundation's work all these years, she continues. What you've built helps thousands of children who would otherwise be overlooked. That's worth more than any apology or reconciliation. I nod, acknowledging the assessment without emotion. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness, she says. I just wanted you to know that I see the value of what you've created. Not just the company, but the Foundation. Something truly authentic emerged from what happened. Authentication often reveals unexpected truths, I reply. She smiles slightly. Always the appraiser. It's who I am. Yes, she agrees. It is. She rejoins her family without further conversation. I observe them from across the room, a husband who values her, a daughter who admires her, colleagues who respect her. She has built an authentic life different from but parallel to my own. 35 years after Thanksgiving, I am invited to give a comprehensive interview for a documentary series on transformative philanthropy. The interviewer asks about the origins of the Visibility Foundation. Your sister's illness dominated your childhood, she begins. Do you blame her for what happened? Blame assumes agency, I reply. My sister was a child in a complex system. The responsibility lay with the adults who created and maintained that system. Yet you've maintained your estrangement from her as well as your parents. Estrangement implies emotional investment, I correct. What I've maintained is distance based on an objective assessment of authenticity. Some relationships cannot be authenticated, no matter how many tests are applied. Your sister has publicly acknowledged her role and expressed remorse. Has that changed your assessment? Authentication is not about remorse, but about fundamental composition. The materials that composed our relationship were flawed from the beginning. No restoration can change that essential truth. That sounds very final, the interviewer observes. Authentication always is, I reply. That's its value. The documentary airs to critical acclaim, sparking renewed interest in the Foundation's work. Applications for the Adult Sibling Reconnection Program increase exponentially. Rebecca volunteers as a peer counselor, helping others navigate the complex terrain she understands from both sides. I neither endorse nor object to her involvement. It is her choice, separate from and unrelated to my own path. Our lives continue on parallel trajectories, occasionally visible to each other but never intersecting. At the 40th anniversary of Om and Iris, I announce my retirement as CEO while retaining my position as chairman of the Visibility Foundation. The company I built from nothing has transformed an industry. The foundation born from my experience has changed countless lives. At the retirement ceremony, I am presented with a custom-made display case containing artifacts from throughout my career. In the center is the Reinhardt Award, now housed in its own illuminated compartment. The plaque reads simply, Michael Harrow. He made the invisible visible. It is, I think, an authentic assessment. 50 years after that Thanksgiving dinner, I sit in my penthouse office, surrounded by the artifacts of a life devoted to authentication. At 77, my hands have developed a slight tremor, but my mind remains precise, my assessments as accurate as ever. The empire I built spans continents, my methodology enshrined in textbooks, my foundation's work integrated into healthcare systems worldwide. The view from my window encompasses the city where I grew up, though the landscape has transformed as thoroughly as my life. Aum and Iris occupies an entire building now, its distinctive logo illuminated against the skyline. The Visibility Foundation headquarters stands adjacent, architecturally designed to mirror and complement the corporate structure. Two aspects of the same vision, separate but aligned. My executive assistant enters with the morning briefing. The Museum of Modern Authentication has requested a final interview for their permanent exhibition on your methodology. The Visibility Foundation Board has approved the annual scholarship list for your review, and Ms. Rebecca Harrow Davis has requested a meeting. I raise an eyebrow at the last item. It has been 5 years since I last saw my sister at a foundation, fundraiser, where we exchanged brief civil acknowledgments before returning to our separate circles. She is 73 now. Her health stabilized decades ago through treatments partially funded by research grants from my foundation, a fact neither of us has ever directly addressed. Schedule the museum interview, I instruct. Send the scholarship. List to my tablet. Regarding Ms. Harrow Davis, inform her that my schedule does not permit personal meetings. My assistant hesitates. She indicated it was related to the Harrow family collection donation. This gives me pause. The Harrow family collection is a term I have not heard before. Elaborate. She didn't provide details, sir. Only that it concerns artifacts from your shared childhood and a proposed donation to the Museum of Modern Authentication for their permanent exhibit on your life's work. I consider this information dispassionately. Schedule 30 minutes, last appointment Friday. The week proceeds with the structured precision that has defined my life. Board meetings, authentication consultations on particularly valuable or controversial items, a virtual lecture for graduate students in the authentication program I endowed at the university. I review the scholarship recipients, approving the list without modification. The foundation team has internalized my criteria perfectly after 5 decades. Friday arrives. I prepare for Rebecca's visit with the same methodical care I would apply to any potentially complex authentication challenge. I review our last several interactions, brief and infrequent as they have been. I consider possible motivations for this meeting and prepare appropriate responses. She arrives precisely on time, another indication of how thoroughly she has come to respect my boundaries. The years have bent her slightly, silver hair cut in a practical bob, sensible shoes, the weathered face of a woman who has lived through significant physical challenges. Yet there is a dignity in her carriage that was not present in our youth. "Thank you for seeing me, Michael," she says, taking the offered seat across from my desk. "You mentioned a collection," I respond, bypassing social preliminaries as always. She nods, unsurprised by my directness. "Yes. After clearing out the last of my storage units, I discovered several boxes containing items from our childhood home. Most were mundane, but some I thought might interest you. Or rather, might interest the museum creating the exhibition about your work." She places a small archival-quality storage box on my desk. "This contains items I believe authenticate aspects of your childhood that were previously undocumented. Report cards your parents never read, newspaper clippings of your early academic achievements, photos where you appear at the edges half cropped out, school awards sent home but never acknowledged." I make no move to open the box. "Why bring these to me now?" "The museum approached me," she explains. "They're creating a comprehensive exhibit on your life and work. They asked if I had any childhood memorabilia that might humanize their presentation. I realized I had these items, preserved accidentally through multiple moves. And you wish to donate them." "Only with your approval," she clarifies. "These authenticate your experience in a way my words never could. They provide physical evidence of what you've described in your writings and interviews, the systematic invisibility you experienced." I consider her words carefully. "You're offering material evidence for the permanent historical record." "Yes." Her gaze is steady. "Not to change your assessment of our family dynamic, which has been accurate from the beginning, but to ensure the historical record reflects the truth as you lived it." I open the box methodically, examining each item with professional detachment. Science fair certificate with my name, a local newspaper photo of a chess tournament victory, my achievement noted in small print while another story dominated the page, a high school report card with straight A's and no parental signature. Each item is precisely as she described. Physical evidence of systematic neglect preserved by chance through decades. Incontrovertible proof for the historical record. "These would complete the authentication of your narrative," Rebecca continues. "I thought you might appreciate that. Completeness has always mattered to you." I close the box carefully. "I'll have my authentication team verify these items." "Of course." She smiles slightly. "I would expect nothing less." We sit in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable, simply void of unnecessary words. "There's something else." she says finally. A second part to my proposal. I wait, expression neutral. The museum asked if I would provide a companion oral history, my perspective as the inadvertent beneficiary of the family dynamic that shaped your work. I declined unless you approved it. Why would my approval matter after 50 years? Because authenticity matters, she replies simply. And the authentic truth is that I was wrong, and you were right. The family dynamic was exactly as you assessed it. Any oral history I provide would confirm your analysis, not challenge it. I study her with the same careful attention I would give a potentially valuable artifact. There is no deception in her expression, no hidden agenda I can detect. Only a simple offer to confirm the truth as we both now understand it. Your oral history would authenticate my experience to the historical record, I clarify. Yes, permanently and publicly. The clinical part of my mind notes the elegant symmetry. 50 years ago, her revelation at Thanksgiving dinner exposed my financial worth to people who valued me only as a resource. Now her testimony would expose the truth of that dynamic to historical permanence. The authentication would be complete, I observe. Yes, she agrees. The final verification of your assessment. I consider the proposal with professional detachment. I will approve both donations to the museum, the artifacts and your oral history, provided my authentication team verifies the items first. Thank you. She rises to leave, then pauses. I've followed your foundation's work all these years. The siblings who receive support, the families who learn to maintain balance, the healthcare protocols that changed how medical systems support entire families, not just patients. I acknowledge this with a slight nod. Your revenge created something remarkable, she continues. Something that transformed countless lives, including mine, though not in the way anyone could have predicted. She walks to the door before turning back. The authentication was always complete, Michael. You were right from the beginning. I just wanted to ensure the historical record reflected that truth. After she leaves, I examine the items more carefully. Each piece confirms what I have always known, providing physical evidence for what was previously documented only through testimony and financial records. The final pieces in a 5-decade authentication process. I instruct my team to verify the items, then approve their donation to the museum, along with Rebecca's oral history contribution. The historical record will now contain the complete truth, authenticated from both sides of the experience. The museum exhibition opens 6 months later. The Authentic Life, Michael Harrow and the Science of Valuation, occupies an entire wing, chronicling my methodology, business success, and the social impact of the Visibility Foundation. One room is dedicated to origins, displaying the childhood artifacts Rebecca donated alongside her recorded testimony. Her voice plays on a continuous loop, calm and measured. My brother's assessment was flawlessly accurate. Our family valued him only when his financial utility became apparent. The systematic neglect he documented was real, persistent, and damaging. These artifacts authenticate his experience beyond question. I attend the exhibition opening, watching as visitors move through the rooms chronicling my life's work. They pause longest in the origins room, faces reflecting understanding as they connect the childhood experience with the authentication methodology that emerged from it. Rebecca attends with her family. We acknowledge each other with brief nods across the crowded gallery but do not speak. There is nothing more to say. The authentication is complete, the assessment final, the historical record accurately preserved. As I prepare to leave, the museum director approaches. Your sister's contribution has made this exhibition complete, she observes. The artifacts and her testimony provide context that was previously missing. Authentication requires complete evidence, I reply simply. Indeed. The director smiles. Your life's work is now fully authenticated for future generations. I return to my penthouse office, gazing out at the city where my empire stands illuminated against the night sky. 50 years of methodical work, building value from what was once rendered invisible. The authentication process that began with a Thanksgiving revelation has reached its conclusion. The final assessment is recorded, verified, and preserved, not just in my foundation's work or my company's legacy, but in the permanent historical record. The invisible child became visible on his own terms, his assessment validated beyond question. The betrayal revealed at that long-ago dinner table has been transformed into an authentication methodology that changed an industry, a foundation that transformed healthcare practices, and now a historical record that will outlast all participants. This was never about forgiveness or reconciliation. It was about establishing an unassailable record of truth. The record now stands complete, authenticated by all parties, preserved for posterity. The appraiser's work is done. The authentication is verified. The value is established beyond question.